What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media outside of Gillette Stadium, where Mike Vrabel just spoke with the media ahead of the 2025 NFL Draft. Patriots, as we know, holding the number 4 overall pick, and New England ready to make a potentially franchise-altering selection. Mike Vrabel spoke today about many things, including a little bit about Abdul Carter's visit to Foxboro yesterday, what they could potentially do with the number 4 overall pick, if they've received any trade calls yet on it, some Stephon Diggs information, and a whole lot more. So, I guess what were some of your main takeaways from today's Vrabel press conference, and I guess what do you make of where they're at with the number 4 overall pick right now?
Yeah, well, Vrabel is an expert at saying a lot without saying much. And I say that respectfully because he gives you little grains of information, but there's nothing crazy like trade talks, for example. He mentioned, the phone's not ringing off the hook or anything. That's also because of timing, right? That's the kind of thing that picks up more next week.
Right.
One thing that stood out to me was how he mentioned that you'd like for the best player available and the top position of needs to align, but that's not always how it works. And that's something I've said on the show a ton of times because as much as you'd like to always take the best player available, Mike Vrabel said, well, we're not in the market for a quarterback, so if that best player was a quarterback, you wouldn't want the team to take a quarterback. But at the same time, you could go too far in the other direction and say, well, we need a left tackle, and of course, Will Campbell is a starting caliber left tackle in the NFL. But if he was somebody who was more questionable and you were saying, well, he probably is a bit of a reach, you wouldn't want to do that either. Right. So I do think that Will Campbell, one of the people I think we can insinuate that Mike Vrabel thinks could be a starter. He mentioned that he does see starting caliber left tackles. The question was asked about the 4th pick, so funny. I don't know how much that stretches if he thinks they're in the back of the first round, maybe in the second as well.
The question was, for some little back and forth context here, the question to Vrabel was, do you see a starting caliber or a starting caliber left tackle at the number 4 overall pick? And he basically said, yeah, there's starting caliber tackles in this class. And so it was kind of like a strange back and forth where he answered the question, but you can kind of parse through it, which is what we're supposed to do here on these shows and things of that nature.
I'm still learning that part of the game.
Yeah, no, it was kind of you could see it both ways. He answered it, but also saying, yeah, maybe they're not starting caliber at pick number 4, but they are in this class. So it still does sound like, at least right now, Will Campbell will be on the table for them. He also mentioned, I know you had asked about analytics and how that kind of works into their evaluations. I thought he had some good answers on production and how production doesn't always mean they're going to translate, or not. Lack of production doesn't mean they're not going to translate. So I thought those were some interesting answers from Vrabel. What were your thoughts on kind of what he said about the analytics portion?
Yeah, well, he mentioned Danielle Hunter, a guy who in college wasn't super productive, but he had the traits, he had the testing numbers, and obviously now he could potentially go into the Hall of Fame one day. And a big part of that he mentioned is how the guy's used. So you think about a guy like Shamar Stewart. He's commonly referred to as someone who, because of Texas A&M's scheme, he wasn't often an outside linebacker rushing the way he's probably going to be in the NFL. Sometimes he was head up on tackles, sometimes he was inside of tackles with angles that didn't give him much of an advantage rushing the passer, but he did look better when he was on the outside. Now, personally, I don't love Shamar Stewart, especially at the number 4 pick. I still think that he was on the ground way too many times. I think he's way too raw to invest a pick that early, but at the same time, I think it's important to note that with pass rushers specifically, that's where he really dove into this question. The fact that they didn't produce in college doesn't always mean they're not going to be able to produce in the NFL, so that was probably my biggest takeaway on that one.
He was also asked if him being at the press conference means he has final say over the draft situation, whether it's Elliott Wolf in the front office. And he basically said that it just means that he was asked to go out there and answer questions for us. But he did note that there's been some solid alignment with the coaching staff and the front office so far through this entire process. Last thing he was asked was on Joe Milton, and basically alluding to the fact that the reps just weren't going to be there for him. They tried to do what was going to be the best for him and the team as well, and that it was going to be Drake May and Josh Dobbs moving forward. So anything else to glean from the press conference in general, or also just the Joe Milton situation?
Just to put a bow on the Joe Milton thing, since it came up, it really just confirms the report that Joe Milton was somebody who was probably going to end up being QB3. When Josh Dobbs was signed, he was told that he was going to be the primary backup, so it made sense he was going to lose those reps. Whether or not he wanted to be a starter, I doubt he wanted to be the QB3 on any team, so I just think the move made sense for both sides.
Patriots coming up in the NFL Draft, the number 4 overall pick next Thursday. We'll be here in Foxboro. Just want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Head over to Game Time and use code CLNS. You get $20 off your first purchase. You can see the Red Sox. They're opening up next week. Patriots back here in Gillette Stadium. Could be good this year. Stephon Diggs just signed. So fun times down here in Foxboro. And if you want to get to a game again, head over to our friends at Game Time. Use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.